Halo Reach was Bungie's goodbye letter to Halo, and now that it has joined Bungie's other games in the Master Chief Collection, I thought we could continue our rankings of the Halo missions. I've never been as definitive about my rankings for Reach. Many of the missions at the bottom of my list were once upon a time were at the top, and the missions towards the top may have seen time near the bottom. I think this is mostly because I see most of Reach's missions as middle-of-the-road entries. Still, I thought a lot about my rankings and will stand by the order I ultimately decided on. Without further ado, let's get into it. Also, this will probably be an unpopular choice, but I decided to leave Lone Wolf off this list. So it's kind of in the same vein as like an ODST, how I didn't include Mombasa Streets just because it's not really a traditional level. So same thing here with Lone Wolf. Bungie was really great at crafting first levels. And while they always varied in terms of quality, I would always consider them at least solid. Winter Contingency is by far my least favorite first level, at least until Halo 5. It's not bad, and it's not the worst level of any Bungie Halo, if that makes sense, but it's just such a lackluster beginning. It's big and open, but kinda empty and lifeless, and I always preferred more linear and tighter crafted and structured openings to allow the player to get comfortable and used to the controls and basic sandbox, as opposed to having vehicles and open fields to start. Now, I know this next one will upset quite a many fans, and it will probably come as a surprise that it is so low, and that mission is Long Night of Solace. Now, remember, this list is based primarily on gameplay. With that in mind, let's take a look at Long Night of Solace's sections. The beginning has an assault of a beach, a nostalgic callback to the Silent Cartographer mission from the first game. It doesn't really add a whole lot, however, in terms of innovation. It's just a quick callback. Then the real problems start. The ship combat section of Long Night of Solace is a failure. You fight two enemy types in one location and then do it again in another. Your ship has lock-on missiles and a primary fire mode that tells you exactly where to lead your shots. It's boring, and definitely a dud in terms of Bungie's ideas, at least in terms of its execution. It's just a section that really falls flat. I don't mind the try though, and it's understandable that Bungie didn't have a 100% hit rate. The rest of the mission is better. There's a really cool 0G section and some interior brawls. The defense section at the end is sort of lame, but it's not a deal breaker. I will never understand the love of this mission the community seems to hold. It has its moments, but it's too inconsistent to rank much higher than this. The package has a lot going for it, but a lot going against it as well. On one hand, it reuses play spaces that the player has already been through, which is never ideal, even if the time of day change and color palette and lighting change is nice. It also helps to show us how we really lost Reach and show the destruction and failure, but I stand by reusing play spaces is almost never a good idea. The mission also ends in a defense section, and even if it is one of the better defense sections in Halo, with turrets and a wide array of firearms, Halo is at its worst when the game comes to a halt to have the player defend a set area. This is the only mission in the game with a tank in it, so it has that going for it. But at this point in the Halo franchise, jumping into a Scorpion and blowing shit up was definitely starting to lose its luster. Not that it's bad, it's just not very innovative. Overall, the package is solid, but has some stuff going against it. Exodus is a decent mission, but it has some issues as well. I like the idea of a mission that revolves around civilian rescue, but there are some weird design decisions, like having a section where suicide grunts charge at you down tight corridors, or having the only section in the game that requires a specific armor ability. It also stands as the mission that uses the most brutes, especially unarmored ones. These enemies lack the challenge of shielded brutes or elites, and this only plays into the game's issues of connect the dots gameplay. Still, not a bad level, and it has plenty of variety to go around. Nightfall is clearly a nostalgia mission, meant to be a callback to the fan favorite and beloved Truth and Reconciliation mission from Combat Evolved. Everything from the nighttime aesthetic to being given a sniper rifle with extra ammo carrying capacity as your starting firearm. It mostly works, even if it lacks a ton of originality. Everything it does well, Truth and Reconciliation already does just as good or better. Two main things stand out as areas that Nightfall does worse than its CE counterpart. One, your starting weapons are a sniper and a magnum, as opposed to a sniper and an assault rifle. It's a subtle change, but one with a large implication. Taking away the pistol, player's multi-purpose weapon in CE, forced the player to get comfortable with the sniper. Only having an extreme close range and an extremely long range UNSC weapon forced players to make tough choices and stretch the intended ranges of their firearms. In Reach, you're given a magnum, which isn't the utility weapon that the DMR is, but it's still a headshot-capable weapon with a scope that can function in mid-ranges, making the player all too versatile. The second issue is that there is no second half of the mission to contrast the first. Truth and Reconciliation had a second half that was a close quarters fight inside a Covenant ship. Nightfall never goes that route, which means it's all open sniping for the whole mission. Just less variety. I do appreciate the addition of wildlife into Reach, and nowhere is it more apparent than Nightfall. I was a little too negative for most of this. Nightfall remains a solid mission that is a nice change of pace from the rest of the campaign. It just doesn't really do anything to really step out of the box or push the franchise forward. Oni Sword Base is a great example of a solid but unspectacular mission. It has a good variety of encounters and some vehicle action. Had the first mission been more of a close quarters intro, maybe I would appreciate an open mission a little more. As it stands now, I really like Oni Sword Base, but I've always struggled to come up with anything to really say about it, great or below average. I've really struggled where to put the Pillar of Autumn. On one hand, it doesn't actually do a ton that stands out, but what remains is a neat little bow that brings Bungie's saga full circle, and leads seamlessly into Combat Evolved's mission of the same title. Maybe it's not fair, and I'm a little biased, and only putting it this high because I know it's the end of an era, but it always just seemed grand in scale and had some solid encounters and didn't have too much I didn't like. Maybe there were areas with too sparse cover, and ending on a defense section is never great, but the Pillar of Autumn will always be remembered and loved by Halo fans. It truly was the end of an era. New Alexandria is the one mission we get to use a Falcon, and it is awesome. One thing that New Alexandria does that Bungie's other flying sections didn't always do was making sure to split up the Falcon sections with traditional infantry sections that are also unique from one another. For example, one room you're surprised by buggers, another you're up against elites, another you're up against brutes. There's even a room where you have to battle it out with 2 pairs of hunters at the same time. Maybe it's a little short and could have used a more overarching goal or objective, but I always find myself looking forward to New Alexandria on every playthrough. Tip of the Spears reaches big battle sprawling wide open outdoor mission. While it doesn't have a ton that's unique, it does combine a good amount of elements from big battle levels like Assault on the Control Room and open Warthog levels like Savo Highway, even if there is no tank here. I love all the action that's going on in the background as well. They did add a turret section, which thankfully is short-lived and not overly ridiculous as to not channel too much of the Call of Duty campaigns. One negative that does stand out is repetitive objectives, but it's a little too hard to knock it for that, seeing as other Halo missions can be far more repetitive. It may not be as great as Assault on Control Room, Metropolis, or the Ark, but it still has enough of that feeling and carries over enough of what they do well to be placed this high. Well, there you have it, all 9 Halo Reach missions ranked. Thank you so much, guys, for watching. Be sure to check out the other Halo rankings if you have not, and be sure to check in next time as Bungie would move on to work on Destiny and sell the franchise to Microsoft, and 343 would be formed, and of course Halo 4 would follow. And so next ranking video, we'll be taking a look at Halo 4's campaign and seeing which missions I like best from there.